Hello, and welcome to Positive Parenting for Pandemic Times. This workshop was presented by Megan Barella as part of an online program for the Hillsborough Public Library on July 22nd, 2020. This recording begins approximately 30 seconds into the program.
Individualized support. All right, just some community guidelines that we have respect for unity in diversity, that we're all in this together as parents of the next generation. Within that, parenting in pandemic times, for some families, this time has been like a pretty mellow stream. For other parents, it's been like a raging river. And for other parents, it's been more like a tornado or a storm. So just know that we see you and we support you wherever you're at tonight. Part of our unity and diversity is also coming together as an anti-racist parenting community to speak and act in ways that advance racial equity in society, and that we are committed to interrupting racism. This definition and a wonderful resource, if you want to learn more, is from Small Business Town Hall. You can Google that on YouTube, and it's put out by Hello 7. Within that, we see the movement for Black lives as a human right issue, and we are a parenting community committed to racial justice and equity. Okay, the second community guideline. I want you to know you are the expert on your family, and I'm your number one support person. We want to create during this time together a parenting circle of trust and support, so that you can then go home and create that circle of trust and support with your own family. Stress is the number one obstacle to showing up as the parent you want to be. So if you're struggling today, please know it's not a character flaw. It's not about you being a bad parent. It just probably means that your stress levels are high. Tonight, we want to affirm your inner wisdom and increase accessibility to parenting tools and support, and hopefully leave with your faith and hope restored in your parenting. Also, to respect confidentiality tonight and the power of curiosity. To keep confidential what is shared here this evening, very often we end up with people, oh, I didn't know that you were going to be here. So to just respect everyone's privacy and to come with an open heart for positive change. One of the ways that we can do that is getting into a place of just wondering and getting curious about what would be most supportive to your parenting. And just know that this is a judgment-free zone that you can share openly, and we will provide unconditional support. Brief overview, I see some familiar and some new faces. I am a certified positive discipline parent educator. I'm a mom to an 11-year-old, and I have a background in education and conflict resolution. I am a child abuse survivor, and so I know firsthand the negative legacy of parenting that sometimes we inherit, and also the reality of high stress parenting. I get that. And from that place, I help families reclaim our birthrights to happy homes. Okay, well, let's go ahead and dive into the content. We'll talk about positive parenting in pandemic times. So what exactly does positive parenting mean? Positive parenting is the continual relationship of a parent or caregivers and a child or your children that includes caring and teaching, leading, and communicating and providing for the needs of a child consistently and unconditionally. That is the textbook definition of positive parenting. In our community, we come together to raise our next generation of world leaders. Your children have gifts to share to make the world a better place. And we want to ensure that they have that support within themselves to live their gifts. We also focus on parenting that embodies mutual respect, solutions, and positive relationship. And we practice parenting with both kindness and firmness, that our children need love and respect at the same time. Okay, so now there's the definition of positive parenting. The definition of a pandemic is when the whole world is affected by a disease. And right now, the whole world, we're battling two diseases, and COVID and racism. So the pandemic's impact on families, as I mentioned earlier, for some it's been relatively calm and they've actually enjoyed this time. And for other parents, this time has been very turbulent. And so there's a spectrum of moderate to stress to what would be considered toxic stress. During this time, it's magnified, the pandemics have magnified the economic and health disparities from systems of inequities and injustices that target Black, Indigenous, and all people of color families, okay? So for positive parenting action steps during this time, there is a Families for Educational Equity Facebook group you can request to join. It's based here in Washington County. I encourage you to get involved with your local elections this fall, and I actually have an anti-racism resource list put out by, featuring Black educators that I'd be more than happy to send out to you. Okay? Now, for all of us during this pandemic stay-at-home time, we're coming off of literally 4 months, which for most of us has been the most stressful time in parenting collectively. So we all, with the stay-at-home order, we've all been living under a magnifying glass. In that we were confined and still are to some extent to the four walls of our home. And so any behavioral challenges during this time have been magnified. We also experienced, and for our children, social disconnect, an increase in screen time, and concerns and challenging around school. From that, for most of us, we have some negative behavior cycles and patterns with our children that have been born from this time. So if you are struggling, please know that you're not alone. And most of us are struggling as parents to some extent, and we really are in this together. Okay, so here's the challenging of positive parenting in pandemic times. It's very challenging to maintain our goal of caring, teaching, leading, communicating, and providing for the needs of our children consistently and unconditionally if we're experiencing high stress and chronically unmet basic needs. And I hope our time tonight can help you access more tools and support, okay? When we're looking at the reality of each of our lives today, I invite you to look at the relationship between stress and support in your lives, okay? So if you will take a moment to just think about what are your top 3 areas of stress this summer. What is it that you and your family are uniquely working with? And it's important to honor these challenges so we can bring in more support. So within that, and you're welcome to share in the chat if you'd like to share your top stressor and your top area of support. So what you want to think about with your top area of support, this could be support from your community. It could be your inner resources that you have. Let's see, I just wanted to, great. Okay, great. So it seems like, okay, you have 3. I'm just checking out the chat right now. And if you want to share in the chat, you're welcome to. It's totally optional. What you would say your top stressor is this season, and what's your number 1 area of support? And you're welcome to share that if you'd like to in the chat. So it looks like tonight we have a 3.5-year-old, a 7 and 11-year-old, 2, 8, and 10, and also I know a baby and I think a 5-year-old. So yeah, and just a lot of stress, right? The reality of working from home while the kids are at home, and really having so many demands on primary caregivers, okay? So we want to get in this place where we can see clearly stress and support so we can work to help you develop a structure and a plan tonight, okay? When you're thinking about your stress and support, what the goal is at least, if you picture like a scale, a measuring scale, to at least have your stress and support even out. So you have as much stress coming or as much support coming in to balance out the stress. what can happen, and when we tend to have challenges as parents and challenges with our kids, is simply when the stress weighs heavier than the incoming support. Okay? Within that, please remember you are the best gift your children can ever have. And we want you to support you in caring for yourself like the gift you are. When we're talking about a framework and a structure for this summer, to remember that you are that structure and foundation for your happy home. So we want to have your needs met and lots of incoming support. And within that, to look at least the next month on how you can schedule in care for yourself time. I don't say self-care because unfortunately that's become something that seems like a privilege that we have to pay for. But for all of us, we can schedule in care for yourself time. And there is some theories that say what we schedule in is what's going to happen. So if you think about the other non-optional activities in your life, of course they're on your calendar, so you remember them and so they happen. And so can you start scheduling in some time for yourself that is equally important? Okay. And within that, as we're looking at least keeping in balance your stress and support scales, remembering this is not normal times in parenting. And we want to help you have what's called a parenting contingency plan that is responsive to the challenges of this time. Some of the things that you can look at is how can you do less? Is there something that or someone that you can just learn how to say no to? And you let go of non-essentials during this time. And as you're reading this, if you have one thing out of this bullet pointed list that you can do, feel free to chat me that or write it down. Okay, these are things that you can hopefully will help minimize your stress. So lowering expectations, maybe you're going to focus on meeting your basic needs for connection time with yourself or the other adults in your life. Focusing on feeding yourself, making sure you're getting enough water and sleep. Maybe it is focusing on positive relationships, which is difficult to maintain during these times. Or maybe it's developing boundaries, okay? So as we're looking at helping you keep in balance your incoming stress and your support, are there any of these, is anything coming to mind, something, a concrete action step you can take? Um, yes, right. Like taking those solo walks. And that's right, they're not really as refreshing. Like getting out into our neighborhood, it's really not as refreshing as it used to be. Okay, focusing on positive relationship with the whole family. Totally, okay? So within that, when we're talking about developing this contingency plan, and especially around boundaries, because sometimes boundaries also include other extended family members in our home, and sometimes with ourselves and our children, that I love this quote from Brene Brown: the most compassionate people that she interviewed for her research also have the most well-defined and well-respected boundaries. Okay, so most of us would love to have more compassion for ourselves and others, to see that compassion as directly connected to you having those clear and loving boundaries in your life of saying no, of doing less, of lowering expectation. Okay, wonderful. So within that, as we're pulling together, understanding how unique and stressful this time is, understanding support and stress, and developing a plan of clear boundaries that is responsive to the needs of your time. From this place, let's go ahead and set some positive parenting intentions for this time. So, an intention is defined as a goal, but also the healing process of a wound. I'd like you to think about your positive parenting intention as this both an umbrella and a foundation for how you want to feel the rest of this summer. Now, while we're focusing on how we want to feel, and actually we're going to practice how we want to feel, is some really interesting brain science. The brain doesn't actually know the difference between practicing the way we want to feel and actually feeling that way. So say that you do want to feel more compassionate or more joyful or more playful this summer. When we actually say those words and picture ourselves experiencing those words, really embodying those words, from a brain science perspective, that's like we were actually feeling that way. Now, what's important when we're talking about thinking about how you want to feel, and I'd like you to just take a moment to think about how do you want to feel this summer. This is not going to override the stress that you face, the real life inequities of the world, your challenges. But what it does is it allows us, even with our challenges, to access the emotional states that can nurture and support ourselves. And from this, we can literally use our minds to create positive emotional states of being. I think of this as like little gifts that we can give back to ourselves throughout the day. Okay? So when we're working with this, with setting your intention, do you want to feel this summer? Okay? And one way to set your intention is to just say that. How do I want to feel this summer? And then you can go, this list is actually from Nonviolent Communication. And if you would look at the list here and see what 1 to 3 words pop out to you. And they can answer the question, how do I want to feel this summer? Or what do I need more of? What would actually be like this little gift, an emotional gift I can give back to myself to help me get through the challenges of life? Or based on my challenges and my stress and the reality of support in my life, what emotional states would be most beneficial? And there is some research on the power of a 3-word affirmation. So you do have 3 words that speak to you, that speak to your heart of how to frame this summer. You're welcome to share those in the chat. Okay? So, and this can be your positive parenting intention. Now, the important part is once you've set the intention, that you repeat the words so you can help create those positive emotional states and also set a pattern in your brain for the emotional states you do want to experience. Some families set a phone alarm. So I know that some families have done an affirmation like calm, loving, empowered. And they actually set a phone alarm 3 times a day with those words. And then when you're breathing in the words, that's when your body is really experiencing those emotional states and you're going to get all the benefits of that. Okay. Another tool you can use is just take your hand and put it over your heart, because the heart has 40,000 neurons coming out and it has a tremendous ability to soothe the stress centers of the brain. So just by putting your hand over your heart and repeating your 3-word affirmation, your positive parenting intention for this summer, that's also going to help soothe your stress levels and create the emotional framework within yourself for what's most important to you this summer. Okay? So feel free if you want to share. I always love hearing the positive parenting intentions. And as a little aside, if you're working, say, with challenging behavior with your children, you can actually set a 3-word intention for them and what behavior you would like to see in them, what you know their strengths are. And you can just repeat that throughout the day, repeat those 3 words before interacting with your kids. Okay? So this would be, I would invite you the next step when you're looking at the daily reality of life and setting your positive parenting intentions, one thing that you could do, we don't have time because we just have an hour together tonight, but one thing you could do after this, and you're welcome, you can screenshot slides if that's helpful to you. What you would do now is just sit down with a piece of paper and write daily, weekly, and for the rest of the summer season, and kind of write the to-do things and things that you have to do and things that you want to experience, activities you want to do. And from that, you can get detailed so you can plug it into your calendar. And then you're going to want to look at what you write down. And is it all mundane tasks that have to be done? Do you have activities that actually affirm your intention for the summer and bring in more support? And if not, then you can be sure to add more of those activities in. Great. Compassionate, involved, and centered, right? So just kind of breathing those in throughout the day or setting that phone alarm. Also, some parents find they write out the words and they hang them up somewhere that you can see. Calm, confident, and joyful. Great. It's wonderful. I love hearing everyone's affirmation words. Okay. So now that we have this foundation, and that was the foundational piece of your framework or structure for this summer, let's get into the specific parenting tools. In positive discipline, we say connection equals cooperation. In that, when you're connected to yourself, you get more cooperation with yourself. You're able to work literally on the same team with yourself. When you're connected to your mate, if you have one, or your co-parent, then you're able to get more cooperation and work as a team. And the same goes with your children. When they feel connected to you, it's easier for them to cooperate with you, okay? So within that, the way that we look at connection is if you picture your everyday self connected to your highest self or your best place as a parent, that's what we call connection in the work that I do with parents, okay? From a brain science perspective, that highest or best place as a parent is in your prefrontal cortex, which is right here in the brain. And it's also known as your executive function. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that when it's engaged, you're able to be logical, to problem solve, to be empathetic and compassionate, and to put your feelings to express them positively with your words. So this place of connection, living in connection with our best self and with our executive function engaged, is our goal. But the reality for all of us is something called, what the brain science calls, ruptures in connection. That means we're going to all experience times where we disconnect from our best self and our prefrontal cortex. If you're familiar with Dr. Dan Siegel's work, and I highly recommend the book Parenting from the Inside Out to learn more, he calls it a flipped lid. And when we flip our lid, that prefrontal cortex is no longer regulating our emotions, our memories, or the stress response system. So when we flip our lid, that's when we either withdraw or we yell as parents, because we've lost the connection to the executive function. And what's running the show now is fight, flight, or freeze in that stress response system, okay? Incidentally, doing that, if you are in a place where you know, I'm flipping my lid or losing that connection with my executive function a lot during the day, it's not a character flaw. Again, it just means that you're stressed. And doing that hand over heart tool is just a simple and powerful thing that you can do, because it actually soothes the stress centers of the brain and helps your prefrontal cortex or executive function re-engage, okay? Now, connection is a muscle, and just like working our muscles in our arms or legs, it can be developed over time. But again, I do want to emphasize that we're never going to be perfect. We're always going to have ruptures in connection, because that's what makes us human, okay? Now, when we're talking about connection with our kids, co-regulation is actually the goal. not self-regulation. And I want to talk a little bit about that because we hear a lot about developing self-regulation in our kids, and that is the ultimate goal. The human brain is fully formed by somewhere between ages 21 and 25. So by that time in our kids' lives, we want them to be able to self-regulate. But we know for ourselves that self-regulation is challenging. And for our children, what they're actually doing is they're using our brains to regulate their brains. And that's called co-regulation. Okay, so with connection, attention is a poor substitute for connection. And this is a quote that one of my mentors in positive discipline uses. And what this means is if we're seeing negative attention seeking behavior from our children, which can be screaming, it can be pushing a sibling, it can be constantly just wanting your attention. The reason for that is usually that they're trying to get their connection needs met. So if you're in your child's experiencing negative attention seeking behavior, if you can start just being gentle with yourself and your kids and just realizing like, okay, this is a sign for connection. And part of what we talk about with connection and co-regulation with our kids is Dr. Dan Siegel, the pioneer in the field of interpersonal neurobiology, actually says that our children's brains are more like a sponge brain. So if you picture this as the adult brain that's fully formed, but can change without the light throughout our lives, this is actually our children's brains. And our children's brains are literally through this co-regulation. They're just sponging and developing their brains off of ours. Okay? So understanding connection is essential to understanding cooperation in your family. Now, what happens with our children's negative behavior is that the vast majority of kids' behavior, it's totally developmentally appropriate, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. And it's also very easy to get into a negative feedback loop with our kids. And so what this looks like, this is from Conscious Discipline, that our child has negative behavior. You know, maybe they are pushing or they're doing some screaming, or they're a tween, an older child, and they're having like a bad attitude, okay? All of it's developmentally appropriate. But if we're under stress or we don't have enough tools and support in our lives, what's going to happen? We're going to respond negatively. And then, due to that co regulation of the sponge brain, when we respond negatively, that ups and intensifies our children's negative behavior. And then what usually happens is we respond even more negatively. And then from this, we can get into a negative feedback loop and behavior pattern that sadly can last years. And that's the work I do with families, is to interrupt that cycle. So just know, all of us have gotten into this cycle at one time or another with our kids. And it just means that either our stress levels are high or that we need to bring in more tools and support. Okay, so we're going to talk about, well, how do we facilitate more connection with our children? In just a moment, we're going to talk about quality time and connection and communication. When we're thinking about connection, human relationship, positive human relationship, it is a basic human need, just like food, water, and shelter. And because of that co-regulation and the sponge brain, our children need quality time with us to grow their brains. And the last thing to remember about quality time is you do so much work either in raising your children, and I really want you to be able to enjoy them. And this happens through quality time, okay? We're going to talk about the characteristics of quality time from a positive discipline perspective. The powers of quality time: it can actually interrupt a negative behavior cycle, that negative feedback loop. Sometimes parents, just by introducing regular quality time, it interrupts this cycle on its own without doing anything else. Okay, not always, but sometimes it happens. Parents often find negative attention seeking behavior stops. And if you're looking at decreasing screen time, this connection piece through quality time, it's the first step of a change in a screen time reality in your family. Okay. Now, I want to say that I always feel guilty initially in talking about quality time with your children because you're with your children all the time during this pandemic. So it's like, wow, you're gonna ask me to like do something else. I'm already spending all my time with our children, with my children. And once you understand like the power right here of the quality time, what I'd like you to do is start shifting that you're gonna put the time in with your children no matter what. With quality time, you get to put it, you get to invest in connection and positive relationship with your children in a positive way through this quality time. Without this connection and quality time piece, you're still going to put the time in with your kids, but it's just going to be in the negative attention seeking behavior and the negative behavior cycles. So I want you to rest assured that I'm not trying to add more to your plate, that I'm trying to just have you switch into the quality time piece. And some of you may already feel like, as you look at the guidelines for quality time, that, hey, we have this down in our family. Okay, what we're looking at during this pandemic, the recommendations have changed a little bit. Kids usually need at least 30 times, 30 minutes, not 30 times, 30 minutes of quality time a day, or bursts of quality time to connect with you throughout the day. Because they're not getting that human connection through the outside world, okay? This is designed to be child-led play. If you have a small children, you're just on the floor with them. Older children and small children, it might be outside. And with older kids, you're literally just like sitting with them wherever they are and entering their world in play. Okay? We want it to be media free time and to hide your phone. And I usually set like a timer on a kitchen stove because even myself working in the field, when I first started quality time, literally I'd be like, oh, my skin would just start to crawl because I'd be thinking of everything else I needed to do. So that may or may not be the case for you, but just know you're not alone in that, especially with how busy parents are right now. You want to pick non-competitive activities with a low frustration level. Okay. Don't pick like if you don't like Legos, don't do it. If you know that your kids tend to have a meltdown or a power struggle with this game, then don't do that. Okay. You're just gonna focus on that positive relationship, following your children in play, really slowing down, entering your children's world and enjoying them. And something that may be helpful if you're a visual person, literally just picture yourself creating a door and kind of picture yourself walking through that door, like, write an imaginary door and enter into your children's world and just enjoy them. During this time, look at their smiles, look at the things that they're interested in, smile and laugh at their jokes, and literally just love the children that you work so hard to raise right now. I want you to get, this is the time for you to get the positive benefits of your children. Now, it is possible that your children may test you during this time. You want to try and let go of discipline during this time. And I would say if you know that your kids are testing you during quality time, you can also reach out to me for some extra support. And just make sure that it's an activity that you enjoy as well. In addition, ensuring your children's emotional cups are full, it's going to make your work time smoother. And one of the things that you might want to look at throughout your day is staggering this connection time and then your work time. And then your child does an independent activity, and then having those periodically throughout the day, it can make work time go much smoother. Now, some parents also say that their children are never satisfied. Their cup is never full from quality time, that they always want more and more and more. And this can happen a lot with like the older sibling, especially transitioning to a baby. And in this, you can just reassure your children that tomorrow you'll have more quality time, or later on during the day. Okay. So I'd love to hear, what are your favorite quality time activities with your children? What are the things that you're already doing. And if you want to share that in the chat, it's also fun to share different ideas. If you want some more ideas, definitely chat me your email address and just write kid connection activities, because I have a summer list of activities I can send out to you. And then what do you find, do you have any questions about quality time or real life challenges to implementation? So anything to share about quality time, I would love to hear that and also answer your questions. We're gonna move on, and again, you're welcome. Let's see what we've got here to our next tool, Lego. Yeah. I'm glad. If you love Legos, this is about Legos. It's just like the frustration of the little pieces, right? Maybe I hope that if you love Legos, do them with your kids. But maybe you also have, that activity that you just don't enjoy doing. And I always say for like the quality time, do the activities that you enjoy doing as a child as well, okay? So as we're talking about the connection piece in communication, facilitate more cooperation, I want to ask you a few questions, okay, to determine if this is going to be a good tool for you. Do you struggle with transitions? And most parents and kids do. Do you feel like your children don't listen until you yell at them? And then if you yell, then they go into cooperation. Do you find yourself resorting to threats, consequences, or rewards and incentives? Do you find yourself like you're so busy, you have so much going on, you're literally barking orders across the room? If you really think about it, do you expect your children to operate off your adult priorities, your adult schedule, your adult to-do list? And granted, it's really stressful right now, so that's probably the case for most of us. But are you not realizing that kids, their number one job is to play? And they may be really involved in their play, and we might not be respecting this. They say play is the work of children, okay? So just some understanding of what's adult expectations and priorities, and then what kid priorities are. Do you feel like, on that note, you might be confusing not listening? Like, my kids don't cooperate with me, they're not listening. But in reality, it's not that your kids aren't listening, that they're like disobeying you. It's that actually they're not even hearing you. So if you're identifying with any of those, I would love to hear. And then this tool can help. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is another tool. It's going to be conserving your energy and putting the time in proactively and preventatively to save you time and energy on the flip end when your children are not listening, they're not cooperating, and a power struggle or a meltdown may emerge, okay? So to put this time in on the positive, proactive end, this is connection in communication to facilitate cooperation. And it is from Conscious Discipline. And you can go through, I'm going to look at the chat, you can go through and read the criteria there. Yeah, great. I love hearing. I'm just going to share some of the quality time activities. Daily family walks, playing tag, drawing with chalk, flying kites, micro machines and dolls. They go to the potty and paint, right? That's like that real creative play. I hate this, but she loves it, right? And this is something that if you have those activities that your children absolutely love, and I don't know if you're saying you hate it because you don't enjoy doing it. If that's the case, those activities your kids love, you don't enjoy, you want to save those. Those are like your golden ticket filling the emotional cup. You want to save those activities when your stress levels are low, your basic needs are met, and you have the emotional bandwidth and capacity to play these activities with your children, knowing that this is like gold to your children, okay? And so to just be mindful of those things and do them with your kids when you're able. Okay, so this is the connection in communication to facilitate cooperation. So picture like you're in the kitchen, you're at a workstation, you're barking orders across the room because you've got a million things on your mind. Take a deep breath. and you want to go over to your child, stop what you're doing, and make eye contact. Make sure that your child sees you. And then include positive physical touch that is age and temperament appropriate. So it might be a hand on the shoulder, a hug, holding your child's hand, putting them on your lap if they're little, okay? Or maybe like I do a lot, if you have an older kid, it might be, I kind of like, because I have an almost 12-year-old, so I kind of do like some pretend, like real gentle, like I'm mimicking like a little roughhouse playing, and that really, he likes that, okay? So know your kids and what positive physical contact they enjoy most, okay? So you're gonna get on their eye level, you're gonna have that positive physical contact, and then you're really holding that container with your kids, and you're gonna be present with them, you're gonna keep breathing, make sure your phone is away, and focus on what you'd like to see happen and where your child at emotionally. Like make sure, like think about it. Oh gosh, do they need a snack right now? Are they tired? And really tune into your child. And then from that, you're just gonna say what needs to happen next. So brush your teeth, screens away, okay? And you're gonna make sure with this connection pieces in place, then you're more likely to get that communication and ensure that your children have actually heard what you're saying. Lastly, if you can wrap it up with like something real short and sweet, humor, play, smiles, laughter, make a funny noise, make it into a song. Okay? So let's go ahead and talk about this tool right here. Do you have any questions about the connection and communication? And how could you use this tool at home? Maybe you already are, or maybe there's a time of day that is particularly challenging that would benefit from this tool. And I'd love to hear any real life questions that you have. And then we are going to segue into our last tool of connection. I'm just going to take a little sip of water. So if you have any questions about this tool or how you would like to use this tool, then you can share it in the comments. Excuse me one moment. All right, so when we're talking about the connection and communication to facilitate cooperation, number 4, the last step is including humor, play, or just simply smiles and laughter. And our last tool tonight is actually it's twofold. It's using play in the moment, in those challenging moments of transition or when cooperation needs to happen. And then we're going to go through the tools of play. And then it's following up with a calm and connected moment to do the teaching. Okay, so let's go through that. Well, play is so valuable because it's going to maintain that relationship connection with your children. It's going to help them maintain the co-regulation and the positive benefits of the sponge brain. Using play is really developmentally appropriate best practices for our children. It's going to look different. I know some of you have real little ones, some of you have more tween age, but keep in mind that play is the number one way that children learn, okay? Play is the way our kids learn. And our job as parents is to discipline our children. Now, I always thought discipline meant to punish. Discipline actually means to teach. So if play is the number one way our children learn, and our job is to teach our children, then play really becomes our number one parenting tool, okay? In addition, play soothes your stress levels and ultimately conserves your energy. This is another, when I talk about using play with parents, especially during pandemic times, this is when I initially feel like, oh my gosh, now I'm asking you to be more playful. No, you have enough on your plate, okay? But the thing is, I feel so confident in encouraging you to use play and teaching you how to do it effectively to transform behavior challenges and get more cooperation, because I know it's the only tool that I can say is going to be effective, 80 to 99% of the time. And play, it's going to pretty much be effective nearly all the time, unless your kids have unmet basic needs, right? If they're really hungry or they're really tired, then even in that moment, or if they're like emotionally overwhelmed, in those moments, play might not even work. But every other moment, play is going to be so effective, and it's going to help you flip your energy into positivity, to growing your children's brain with positive connection, and again, soothing your stress levels, because as a right brained activity, play actually soothes our stress levels. Okay, let's go through, and I'd love to hear if you know, okay, when we're talking about play, some parents are naturally playful parents, and if you feel like I'm naturally a playful parent, I'd love to hear the way you use play to teach your children in the comments. For the vast majority of us, we're not naturally playful parents, and we have to unlock the playful parent within us. What I want to say about that is sometimes parents feel a little bit of performance pressure, like you have to be like theatrical, that your kids are going to be like, no, you didn't really use that tool of play really well. And I can just rest assured that, actually one of the Washington County librarians reminded me of this, that when parents use play, don't feel any performance pressure. Your kids are going to be so happy, and they're not going to be judging your effectiveness in using play. Okay. So let's go ahead and just talk about how you can use play as a teaching tool. And again, I'd love to hear for those of you who are naturally playful parents or have taught yourself how to use play, how you use it as a discipline tool. Okay, so things that you can do. Anything you turn into a song, especially in early childhood, definitely under age 3, under age 5, if you turn it into a song, that it's going to result in more cooperation. Okay. I just want to read this. Sometimes I can forget to be playful, but I do have a strength to make little songs and rhymes that are really helpful in transitions. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so making it into a song. Shoes on, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. I mean, it can be anything. I know that families who have struggled with little ones with a diaper change, that once they get older, like the 18-month, 2-year-old age, they resist the power struggles. And one mom said she just made up a funny diaper changing song, and it just transformed the power struggles. Okay. So making it a song can really help with transition activities. Now, those of you with a tween or even a teen, if you turn it into a song, like you're reminding them, get off your screens, it's time to get ready for bed, whatever it is, they're going to roll their eyes. They're going to be like, oh my goodness. But then you'll find that usually they go ahead and go into the cooperation. Okay. On that note, just like saying it in a silly voice or making a funny noise. Some kids, and this doesn't have to be competitive, they love to do things with a timer. So again, with transitions, or it's a screen time limit, or we're going to change activities, it's almost time to wash hands, setting the timer. Okay, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Some children love to set the timers. This is a tool that can really be used across the age span as well. Your little ones, they're going to have an abstract concept of time, and this will also help them learn that. Okay, have the stuffy or the toy, teach it, do the teaching, or say it. Okay, one parent was really having a hard time with bedtime, so she got the child's favorite stuffed animal who would do the talking. And again, this is something that it takes energy thinking about it. And especially at the end of the night, you might not feel like you have the energy to do it, but it's going to be so motivating when you realize how much it conserves your energy and prevents power struggles and meltdowns during challenging times of day. Okay. Redoing the behavior. So this can be around like sibling dynamics. This is probably best if there's a safety issue. You're not going to do it in the moment when, like, say the hitting or the screaming's happening, but later on when people are, everyone's back to their place of connection, then you can say, okay, let's redo. What could we do instead? That I saw you hit your sibling, so what could we do instead? And your child may come up with the ideas, or you may have to give them a few options. With the redo, the trick is to act out the behavior you do want to see. Just like practicing the emotions we do want to feel, when we practice the behavior, it sets the positive pattern for that for our children. And the brain reads that the same as actually doing the positive behavior in the challenging moment. Okay. And then just modeling the behavior yourself, whether it's like gentle hands, brushing teeth, especially for young children, their minds actually think in action words, not in verbal words like we do. And again, for your older kids, it's just going to make them laugh. Okay. So I'd love to hear. And you know what, we're going to open up if you want to stay on for coaching. We can work with some of these tools and you can get individualized support. If you want to stay on for coaching, which will start at 7:30, then think of one specific interaction and scenario with your children that you'd like to get support on, that you're open to some new tools, okay? So you can use the play in the moment of the challenging behavior. You can also use the play because if anyone in your family has that flipped lid, they've disconnected to their highest self and their executive function, the teaching can't happen in that moment. Everyone just needs to take a break to feel calm. So one of the things that you can do is just get in the habit that you don't try and discipline when people have those flipped lids, okay? But it is important to circle back around to the teachable moment in the calm and connected moment. Okay, so why is that? In moments of disconnect, children lose their ability to learn and we lose the ability to teach, okay? In the calm and connected moment, you can actually involve your children in generating solutions because this is one of our main goals as parents today is to develop this generation of world leaders and problem solvers. And that starts with the real life challenges in the home. And you can use curiosity questions that start with what or how, like what happened next? What happens next? Or how can you work it out? What can you do differently next time? What else do we do in the morning before we, do this for the day? And then the goal when you've taken the negative behavior scenario, whether it's around hitting or around getting ready for bed, um, and you are able to create a plan, and then you're going to practice that plan. Okay. This whole scenario right here is an overview. Some of you may read it and you're able to think about how you can implement it right away. But also just know often this is a process that I help parents with throughout like many weeks and months. Okay, so if it feels overwhelmed, I would say you can focus on one area right now. Okay, so as we wrap up tonight, we've been talking about kind of this overview of parenting in pandemic times, maintaining that incoming support that is more than your stress level, creating your intentions to guide your lives and the rest of this summer, talking about connection equals cooperation, and going over 3 of the tools of cooperation, which was the quality time, the connection and communication, and then using play as our number one discipline tool. I invite you, if you'd like to stay connected, this is totally optional. You can chat me your email address to sign up for my weekly, I call it a Sunday message with positive parenting tools and inspiration. On Facebook, I have a Parenting for the Next Generation Facebook group. After these talks, I always offer the opportunity to just schedule a free 30-minute positive parenting breakthrough coaching session. You can schedule this. We can take your real life challenges and some of the tools from this workshop and help you bring them alive. So for those invitations, this is my website, meganbarella.com. And to schedule your free session, you can go to you pull down this tab right here and then schedule. And that offer is only available through this Sunday. So definitely do that if you would like to schedule your free session. Or you can just say free session and email, and I'll go ahead and email you. You can also email me if you optionally do want to sign up for my mailing list, and you may be able to do that on my website. Sometimes the pop-up happens and sometimes it doesn't. And then if you'd like free positive parenting support and tools, this is the Parenting for the Next Generation Facebook group. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Know that we're in this together and we are here supporting you during this time. Thank you so much for the Hillsborough Library for hosting.